With his home dog of the week on the season. So see if we can get him back over 500 this week.
I like it. Matt Green, where are we going first this week? I have a hunch.
Where are we going first this week, sir? We are going to Athens, Georgia for the game of the year. And, sir, I might say maybe the biggest game in Sanford Stadium history. You could call it a matchup of number 1 versus number 2. You could call it a matchup of number 1 versus number 3. Mm-hmm. But what it is, in the first time in college football playoff ranking history, is the first time we will have number 1 versus number 1. Number 1 in the AP poll versus number 1 in the college football rankings poll. Georgia Bulldogs, 8.5-point favorite at home versus the Tennessee Volunteers. I'll let you have the first word here. How do you see this one going?
Ooh, this is tough, man. I've been going back and forth on how I want to approach this on the podcast, because it's like, do I want to go all out here? Do I want to, how can I phrase this? Do I want to jinx the Vols? Do I want to actually put my name to it? Or do I want to be surprised? Do I want to, because like going into the Alabama game, as you may recall, Matt Green, and our great listeners may recall, I predicted Alabama to lose that game to Tennessee outright. I have driven the drive for 10 all season long for the Vols, thought it was coming. And I said they were going to split one of Georgia and Alabama. And people were like, no, they're not doing that. Like, that was just the preseason loss where Tennessee getting to 10-2 meant perfect everywhere else. And they couldn't beat Alabama and Georgia. They're going to have to get the 10 wins everywhere else. Not the case. They already beat Alabama. They, going into this one, it's a different feeling. Obviously, it's not at home. That matters. This is in Athens. And this is one that Matt Green, Nolan Smith being gone for the year, out for this one. That's huge. I think that's one that, I'm sure you'll speak to this too, but when you see that one, you're like, okay, feel better about the offensive line this week. I feel better about Hendon Hooker being clean, because that's something we haven't seen yet, is Hendon Hooker really being pressured all the time. And when Hendon Hooker is pressured a lot, he generally speaking will take off. And Graham Cobb had a good stat on that on Twitter today, is that Stetson will generally speaking stand in the pocket and take the huge blow and throw it. And Hendon Hooker is just most likely going to take off when it's bad. And we'll see what happens. Like, the fumbles can happen that way. We've seen it this season in that regard. But Tennessee does not turn the ball over, really. Like, you had the RPO fumble in the Alabama game late in the fourth, and that almost cost them. And that was just a crazy just mental mistake on that one. But by and large, Hendon Hooker doesn't throw interceptions. Knock on wood. Stetson threw 2 last week. He hasn't been peak Stetson as of late. I don't know. Like, I was thinking about like how this game has to go for both sides to win. And I think going in, I think even Tennessee fans should admit there are a lot more ways this game goes Georgia's way than what Tennessee needs. So I think Georgia can play a lot of different ways and win this game. I think Tennessee might need to play a certain way to get up. And it's kind of like what last year was, where Tennessee got up after the first and Georgia had to make adjustments, and Georgia wasn't really prepared for. And I think Kirby even said this. It's like, guys, if they're not in shape, they're not going to be in shape for this game. If you're not in shape to this point, we can't get you ready for Tennessee's tempo to this point in the year. Like, you're not going to be able to make it. So we'll have to see how that looks, because Georgia hasn't played anybody like this all year. And I think it's kind of like the triple with Army and stuff. We're like, we can practice for it or we can prepare for it, but then it's like in real time, it's there. You can't get off the field. It's a just different element. These defenders are being asked to make so many big time decisions against a better group of playmakers and a more confident group of playmakers than what Tennessee had a year ago. You had Javonte Payton in one of those spots for Tennessee last year. Jalen Hyatt's a totally different kind of guy. Velus Jones is more of the crossing routes, more of the middle kind of stuff. Jalen Hyatt's going to take the top off, and that's not what Tennessee had in the Georgia game last year. I am curious because I don't think Georgia is going to be able to run the ball on Tennessee early. I don't think that's going to be how Georgia beats Tennessee. the way Georgia beat Tennessee last year was James Cook in space, getting him the ball outside the numbers. Like, I don't think they're going to be able to attack Tennessee up the middle. I don't think that's how you beat the Vols. I think you have to attack them through the air, and they're susceptible deep. Bryce Young was picking them apart in that way. That's the way to do it. And I am so curious because I don't know if you saw, like, is AD Mitchell playing in this one? Is it confirmed if he's out or is he in? Do we know for sure?
No, it's not confirmed. I would say he's on the doubtful side
Okay.
though.
So then you look at it and you're like, Lad McConkey's not a deep guy. He's not going to be someone you're looking to deep. Karis Jackson, you would hope, or Blaylock. I mean, you can speak more to this, Matt Green. The guys who can kill Tennessee are the guys on the 2 tight end spots, Darnell Washington and Brock Bowers. And it's going to be a long freaking day for Aaron Beasley and Jeremy Banks to stay with these guys in coverage, and also just the star position. So Wesley Walker's played there a little bit. Nico Slaughter was the one who really came on last week with the pick, with the hard hit on the Kentucky receiver that led to the Juwan Mitchell interception return. Maybe he's the guy. Maybe they figured out something there. How much does Georgia control the game just by Tennessee not having the bodies to stay with Darnell and Brock over the course of several drives and just getting worn down by those two, just being open all the time and being asked to defend them? And then does that open up other stuff for those unproven guys out wide so that they just hit them a little bit at a time with Kenny McIntosh out of the backfield like James Cook last year? Little stuff to Brock Bowers here, little stuff to Darnell Washington there. And then they go for the jugular with something over the top that, I mean, kind of like what Stetson did in the national title, where he hit AD Mitchell deep and you were like, oh, that's a game changing bomb there. It's just a backbreaker that he's capable of. I'm curious if they have that guy in uniform on Saturday, because Tennessee has those guys. Tennessee is going to hit those big plays. Jalen Hyatt is going to score a touchdown on Georgia on Saturday. Cedric Tillman's still not 100%. We'll see what he was doing. He wasn't really doing much downfield last week in his return, doing a lot of quick inside routes, quick curls. Like, he wasn't going deep. He was not the guy we saw pre-injury. Brew McCoy has been kind of quiet of late. Does he get more involved this week? I think the path to Georgia, we'll know if Georgia's going to win this game based on how many 40-plus yard plays they hit. If Georgia's hitting stuff deep and Stetson's able to challenge Tennessee deep and put them in a situation where they have to respect Stetson deep and they have to respect the short stuff with Brock and Darnell and McIntosh, I don't think that's a recipe for success for a Tennessee victory. I think the other stuff has to happen. I think they have to go 17-0. I think Stetson has to make a bad mental mistake, and the math game goes against them, because math is a huge part of Tennessee winning. Is the math game catches up to everybody, and you blink and it's like 28-6, and you're like, damn, like, our offense can start clicking, but that means we're gonna have to get 4 stops in a row, or 4 out of 5 stops from Tennessee. And it would be nice if Tennessee turned the ball over, but Tennessee doesn't do that. So it's harder to get those stops. And Tennessee knows that. They know that they're going to win the math game 9 times out of 10 with this offense. And for them not to, they make 1 or 2. It might just take one bad interception, like an interception pick 6 by Keely Ringo or something, mixed with Georgia's offense matching Tennessee back and forth, and they win by 7. Like, I don't see a path to this being a blowout on either end. I think this is close, and this will be close deep into the fourth quarter. Last year, the depth wasn't there for Tennessee to keep it a game in the fourth quarter, third quarter even. That's changed. Like, the depth is there now, and they're going to be in this game deep into the fourth quarter. It might come down to who has possession last, but I that's what I keep coming back to, is Nolan Smith being out and what that means for Hendon Hooker having time in the pocket versus running for his life, like what it was with Jordan Davis and company last year. If he has time in the pocket, we know what he does there. And then Stetson being like old Stetson and what he was in the national title game, taking those deep bombs and showing the other stuff that makes him the multiple, or the multi-talented quarterback that we've seen that he has not really shown the last couple of weeks. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. One point I think you made in terms of the 40-yard plays, if Georgia's getting those, I think that's the scenario that Georgia wins big. Like, like you said, I think Georgia has kind of multiple ways they can win the game. Tennessee has to kind of play a certain way. Like, I think Georgia can we can just go 10 yards at a time, like just first down after first down. Like, you've kind of seen a lot of that. Like, a lot of the short passing game, kind of just getting the ball to your playmakers and letting them make the plays after the catch, mainly Brock Bowers. And I think that's ultimately what this game comes down to. Like you touched on, Darnell Washington and Brock Bowers are the two best playmakers in the receiving game for Georgia, not counting Kenny McIntosh. I think Kenny McIntosh, is the ultimate X factor in this game, because I think 4 of Georgia's top 5 or 3 of Georgia's top 4 receivers on the season are not wide receivers. 2 tight ends and then McIntosh in there. So he's been really dynamic in the passing game. It wasn't until Dejon Edwards the last few weeks has kind of come on that the running game has really started to pick up. So last week against Florida, you saw Edwards and McIntosh both almost go for 100. So I think McIntosh, if he's having a good game, I think that's how you know Georgia's going to have success offensively. But I think Georgia's offense is really what is not being talked about enough, period, in this game personally. Like I saw a stat earlier this week that under Kirby Smart, Georgia is 1-9 when giving up 30 points or more in Kirby Smart's tenure. And so everyone's like, oh, wow, this Tennessee, you're not keeping Tennessee under 30 points. It's about to be 1-10. Like Tennessee is obviously going to score 30. But what people don't focus on is that also under Kirby Smart, Georgia is 53-1 when scoring 30 points or more, and 41-1 versus Power 5 teams. The one loss actually was to the Tennessee Volunteers in Sanford Stadium. So there is that. But I think not enough people are focusing on the fact that Georgia is number 2 in the country in total offense. Number 7 in scoring offense. Like, this is an elite offense, and Tennessee has, like, they've come on defensively, but they're still, I think, I want to say 26th or so in scoring defense. I think 80 in the 80s in total defense so far this year. So the fact that Tennessee, like, Tennessee's defense is the outlier here. It's like Tennessee's offense is an elite unit. Georgia's offense is an elite unit. Georgia's defense is an elite unit. And Tennessee's defense is the one that's sitting here. Like, that's who's the game is hinging on. Because I think you can expect a good performance from all of those other units in this game. So I go back to the LSU game and the Pittsburgh game, because those are the 2 road games Tennessee's played so far this year. Pittsburgh, it was a long time ago. That game's almost 2 months ago at this point. Tennessee had 13 drives in that game, 3 touchdowns and 2 field goals. Like, that's 8 scoreless drives against Pittsburgh at Pitt, and Pittsburgh also had the 60th ranked offense in the country. Like, and that game goes to overtime, right? If Georgia holds Tennessee to 5 scores on 13 drives, they might win this game by 3 touchdowns. Like, I think that's how much better Georgia's offense is than someone like Pittsburgh. And you even look at LSU, I think you can remember that game gave Tennessee like a solid 13 points in that first half, from fumbling the opening kickoff to going for it in their own territory right before the half. And I think they turned it over at least 1 or 2 more times. I know Tennessee took the punt back inside the 10 or so, but Tennessee had 7 first half drives in that game and only scored 23 points. And their average starting position against LSU in the first half was on LSU's 47-yard line. So they were gifted amazing field position the entire first half and only managed 23 points. And in kind of comparison to LSU to Pitt, Georgia's offense is a lot better than those teams. And if you're getting that many empty possessions, and I also think Georgia's defense is better than both of these defenses. So if you're actually getting stops, which I expect Georgia to actually get some stops, Georgia can sustain drive, like exactly the formula, like we talked about what Kentucky was going to need to do to beat Tennessee. It's like that was going to be Kentucky playing above what they've played all season. So there was no path to Kentucky running the ball and playing keep away and beating Tennessee. They haven't done it all year. There's no reason to think they would do it against a good running defense like Tennessee has. But Georgia has done that. Georgia's been a super balanced attack offensively. Like, I think a lot of people don't even realize that they're 8th in the country in passing yards per game. Like, I think 25th or so in running yards per game, but they're second in the country in total offense, right? Like we're all obsessed with this Tennessee offense, and they're averaging like 25 more yards a game than this Georgia team. So it's kind of crazy. I feel like all you're hearing is like we're playing this up like it's a 2019 SEC championship with LSU versus Georgia, where Georgia actually was Iowa back then, and they were scoring like 25 points a game with the number one defense, and they just couldn't score to hang with LSU. And they even held that LSU team to like, I think 34 points or something, which was actually an accomplishment for an absurd offense. But that Georgia's offense just didn't have the firepower to keep up. This Georgia offense actually does have firepower, even though there's questions about the receivers, and that is definitely a weakness on this team.
They're 118th right now in 40-plus yard plays through the air.
And see, and that's big. And that's why I said if they're getting 40-yard plays, like they might win in a blowout, because Georgia can win this game without even getting the explosive plays, with getting the 7-yard run.
And for reference, Tennessee is number one in the country, a distant number one at 19.
Yeah, I have no doubt in that. But yeah, and so that's why Georgia, and the fact that this is being played in Sanford Stadium, I think is the ultimate just X factor in this. I think Sanford Stadium is good for a solid 4 or 5 points or so in this line. So I just look at Georgia, and it feels like there's been a lot of bulletin board material, like not to make it like too many intangible aspects of this game. But the other aspect is like we haven't seen Tennessee play a bad game, right? Like
Pitt was bad, and I think the second half of the Florida game was pretty bad.
That's fair, but they've had a lot of really good performances. Pitt is probably the worst one, I would say, because Florida they were up big before
that
Florida
whole
made
second
the
half
comeback
against
in the
Florida
fourth
was
quarter.
terrible. Yeah.
So yeah, that's fair, but also Pitt is on the road, hostile environment, like. Is Heinz Field anything compared to what they're about to see?
Many people are saying it's the exact same as Sanford Stadium.
Some people say Pitt Panthers have the best home field advantage in college football. People are saying, but no, and I think the home field is so big for this one. So the fact that I don't know, it feels like Georgia needs this win more than Tennessee, and they're just being counted out by so many people right now. And Tennessee is the talk of the town, the everything. It feels like a game where Georgia's going to come. Like I see this game being played like in the 20s. Like I see Tennessee. This could be a potential like a 17-14 halftime score. Like I feel like this is going to be a game where we don't see a lot of scoring until the second half. And I think I'm going to take Georgia to win and cover the points. I'm going to take Georgia. It's going to be a close game, but I'm going to take like a 34-24 type of game. I think Georgia's just going to get going to get stops defensively. I think Nolan Smith is big. He's bigger in the running game, and Tennessee's running game also gets really underlooked for how good their offense has been this year. But as far as creating pressure on the quarterback, that's the biggest thing Georgia will need to do. But they've had as much success as they've had this year without doing it. So when it comes to a running quarterback like Hendon Hooker, and that's not to sell his passing short, you don't always want to get pressure on that kind of guy, because that's when he can get away and bust a 30-yard run on you. So I tend to think I kind of go back to 2018 Alabama Georgia SEC championship. It's a game I point to a lot because Georgia was last in the SEC in sacks in 2018 after losing in the national championship, lost a lot of that defense 2017. Very similar to kind of what the 2018, very kind of similar to what 22 is from what they lost a lot on defense. They've been way better statistically in 2022, but that team was last in the SEC in sacks. And when the biggest game of the season came, Alabama SEC championship, they got so much pressure on Tua Tagovailoa. Like the man was running for his life the entire game, even hurt him in that game, knocked him out of the game. So it's like, I just trust Kirby Smart, Glenn Schumann, Will Muschamp to dial up something that Hendon Hooker hasn't seen. Like I think Georgia's just a dominant defensive philosophy, basically. And at home in Sanford Stadium, I feel like this stadium is just, the environment is just going to be absolutely outrageous. This fan base has been complaining all year about the home slate, not getting home games, whatever. I feel like we've been waiting forever for this kind of environment. And I think Georgia's going to have what it takes to win this game and win it by 2 scores. Give me 34-24, Georgia.
Do you know who the last team to hold Tennessee below 30 points was?
Who's that?
That's the Georgia Bulldogs in November of 2021. That was it.
I should have guessed that.
60 after that one, 45, 48. Let me get this here. 59, 34, 63, 38, 40, 52, 65, 44. 24 would be bonkers at this point, Matt Green. I have no doubt if that's the final number for Tennessee, they cannot win a football game against Georgia that way. That the score could not be there. It's just like the Alabama game where the score has to be outrageous for Tennessee to win. If they're anywhere near the 20s, they're not beating Georgia. My final score for this one, because look, something I think about too with this one, Tennessee's number 2 in rush defense in the conference. I'm curious to see what holds up there. I think Tennessee wins that matchup, and Georgia does stuff in the short passing game with McIntosh, Bowers, and company. But Vols are number 1 in turnover margin in the SEC, and I think that's an under talked about fact for this. Tennessee's been really good at both taking care of the ball, and now they're forcing more and more turnovers. You saw the turnover party against Kentucky on Saturday against better NFL quarterback and Will Levis versus Stetson. Stetson's shown that he is more how can I put this? Like, he's just, if he gets some pressure in his face, like he gets hit with Byron Young a couple times, like the interception possibilities are there. If we were in the fourth quarter and Stetson hasn't thrown a pick, I don't think I like Tennessee's chances. I don't think they're going to win the game. If Stetson has 2 picks and we're entering the fourth quarter, I think Tennessee's probably already up 2 or 3 scores. And Georgia's playing late game catch up.
I think that's the biggest difference. And Georgia's
number 7 in turnover margin in the conference. They do not have they're an even 0.
And their 3 probably most underwhelming performances of the year, they were 8-0 in the turnover margin. And it's kind of, it feels crazy to call a 3 touchdown win over Florida an underwhelming performance, but that's kind of where we're at right now with who Georgia is and who
y'all
Florida
have the
is.
same second half issue where it's like, for whatever reason, Florida in the second half is just a different kind of beast.
Yeah, but against Missouri, against Kent State, you saw Georgia turn the ball over and actually keep those teams in the game. So that's definitely alarming. Also, and piggybacking off of your Tennessee Georgia stat, the only team that Hendon Hooker did not throw more, only game Hendon Hooker since he's been at Tennessee did not throw more touchdowns than interceptions, was also last season versus the Georgia Bulldogs. So that was also
got hurt in that one.
Stadium.
Remember, he got knocked out. So Milton actually went in for that one, if you remember. Hooker was taking a beating.
I think he threw 1 touchdown and 1 pick in that one.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
Every other game he's thrown more touchdowns than picks. Last stat I'll leave you with, against Power 5 competition this year, Tennessee is scoring 41.6 points per game. Georgia Bulldogs, and I even took Vanderbilt out because they're not even Power 5. Georgia Bulldogs against Power 5 competition, excluding Vanderbilt, is averaging 41.4 points per game. So, I mean, these teams, I just feel like a lot of people are sleeping on Georgia's offense. And going up, Georgia, a good offense going up against a, improved, but I would say mediocre defense, mediocre to average defense. I think that's the biggest difference right here. Like, Tennessee's great offense is going to win some matchups, win some battles against Georgia's great defense. But I think Georgia's great defense will also win some of those battles. Like, I'd have to worry a lot about Tennessee's defense, especially being on the road. The LSU performance was great, but it felt like LSU beat themselves in the first half of that game. And it was like, it kind of got out of hand at that point. And still LSU was like able to get enough stops to like not let the thing get off the tracks until the second half. I just think Georgia's a better team. And so I'm curious to see how it turns out. I almost picked Tennessee just to like screw with you, just to be like, I think Tennessee's a better team. I can't. But I was like,
We
I
knew
go,
you couldn't do that. You're not going into that watching experience picking Tennessee. You
no,
don't
I
want to
couldn't.
have any part of you rooting for Tennessee. You're like, I kind of want to be right and make up some ground. You don't want to do that. It's the whole fantasy thing. Like, you don't want to draft your team's rival in fantasy football because it's like, I don't want to be rooting for this guy when they're playing my
That's
team. This is insane.
that's fair, but I just, as good as Tennessee's been to this point, I still kind of question how they are as a complete team going on the road. This is just going to be a very hostile environment, and I love how much people are questioning the environment that is Sanford Stadium. Just add fuel to that fire, sir.
Look, here's my prediction, and it's going to speak to my final college football playoff prediction, which is I think the way this football season ends is Alabama versus Tennessee in the national title. That's how I think this ends. Is I think we're getting the rematch of all rematches.
Call it the second Monday in January.
People are saying this is
you're gonna see someone write that somewhere if it happens. Just know I was the first one to come up with it.
I like it. Trademark Matt_Div_Green.
But they'll have to get through the boys in Athens, Georgia first. Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't. Maybe Alabama beats. Maybe they beat Tennessee and Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship, and then. But see, that's the thing. They do. If
I was going to say, no, Georgia needs to beat Alabama in that situation. If Tennessee loses, they need Georgia to win the whole thing.
But as I was saying, in terms of you getting an Alabama-Tennessee matchup.
Yeah, then it's messed up. Yeah.
I'm not sure if that can even happen, honestly.
It can, because you lose to Alabama in the SEC title game, and then... Or, no,
Tennessee I think Tennessee's got to win this game in order to somehow play Alabama.
I don't think so, or I guess maybe, yeah, that's possible.
But we can get all other